right, so we got our primary cast introduced to you guys, but there's another guy that I want to tell you about that was a huge part about the whole band. Um, One of my best pals, Matt Winegar. Mrs. Taylor, she was the secretary at Thornton Junior High School when I was when I used to go there, and she was always telling me about, you need to meet this kid Matt. So this is how far this goes back, and that's totally nuts. Okay, so Mrs. Taylor telling me I need to meet this kid Matt. At that time, I was taking guitar lessons from a Fremont legend, Joseph Blay. R.I.P. Love you, Joe. Oof, you're the man, dude. So he's telling me, you need to meet this kid, Matt. So back then, you didn't have all the, social media and stuff like you do today. So, we did the good old-fashioned little kid style play date, and we met at Gilbert's Music in Fremont, and that was on Fremont Boulevard by the Wiener Schnitzel. And it's so funny because there's actually a Fungo Mungo song about that. We might even get into that later. And so, yeah, it's really funny. Matt and I were buddies as kids. We both took lessons from Lyle Workman over at Allegro Music. And, I would definitely say he has always been the sixth member of Fungo Mungo, recording our early demos and just being my buddy playing guitar together as a kid growing up. And, he was always part of the team, He had this cool task, or no, it was a Fostex 4-track tape recorder, and he made the best demo tapes for us. And, that, gave us a huge advantage as being a local band, because, we had the childhood genius that was Matt behind our recordings, which was friggin' badass. And that's a whole other story, and we're definitely getting into that one. So anyway, we got this kind of a kick-ass team put together, and since we're talking about team members, let's talk about Damon's big brother Jimmy Ramirez, and he's a guy who, one of my best friends, and such a big part of the band, a big part of who I was back then, and just my soul brother. And, even though he was Damon's brother and Billy's brother, he was my brother. He was all of our brothers, and we loved him so much. And so, he was getting gigs for us. Matt was helping us record, and, we were just, developing at this crazy rate, and it was just the most amazing time. So that was the team back then. I'm going to say around 1987, 1988, 1989, that was Team Fungo. And man, we played some great shows. We first started coming up, none of us were 21 years old yet. And I remember we were playing at Marsugi's in San Jose on South First Street, and Dot 3 was playing that night, and that was Dave's band. And Primus was playing that night. And this is an old incarnation of Primus where Curveball was the drummer, Todd was the guitar player still, and it was Les. And I remember, wow, this is totally friggin' nuts. This is an interesting scene that I have found myself to be in. And the cool thing about it is none of us were 21 yet, and they needed to get us out of there. I was like, these kids need to get the fuck out. And we actually got paid. They gave us our money just because they wanted us to leave, and we went to Denny's, and we ate, and it was totally rad. And so that was Team Fungo, right around, I'm going to say, 88, 89. So from there, a lot of wild stuff happened, and, Matt ended up being our bass player for a little bit, which was totally insane because, in my opinion, Matt is probably the most talented person I've ever got a chance to know. He's my friend. Whatever instrument you put in his hand is completely nuts. And one night we found ourselves at the Omni in Oakland, and it was a Primus Fungo Mungo, and we were playing with this other band, Risk, also. And Risk's bass player was this guy named Arion Salazar. Also in the band Risk was this guitar player guy, Brian Kehoe, and this drummer dude, Alan Lucchese. And all those names are definitely like ding, 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 ding. So yeah, that Omni show was a trip. It totally put the band in another trajectory. Now we had Orion Salazar in the band, and oh my God. Okay, so that dude can freaking play the bass. You know, pretty much the best bass player I've ever met. It's nuts how good he is, and he was in our band. I remember he got the demo tape, and we jammed with him the first time, and he knew all the songs perfectly. It was crazy. He knew the songs better than we knew the songs, and it was like, holy shit, okay. We have this guy in our band, and we were truly off to the races. I felt like, you know, we have this amazing group of guys playing music together, writing these cool songs in the right place at the right time. Our friend Matt recording us, and Damon's big brother, you know, taking care of getting us gigs. So we were definitely looking really good. You know, we had made this deal with the Primus guys that we would help them out with the demo tape, and they would make us some t-shirts and get some gigs, you know, and we really had a cool working relationship with those guys. One of the gigs that they got us on was a Chili Peppers show, and that's kind of what sent us to the next level. You know, a lot of bands know the struggle of, you know, playing locally and you know, just trying to make a name for yourself, and then you get a, you know, an opening shot for a national act like that, and the next thing you know, boom, you know, it's like, holy crap. Every single one of our shows after that was friggin' killer, and it still is to this day, you know. And that was just one of those times where it's like, okay, one of those, you know, you have arrived moments. And yeah, totally friggin' nuts for a bunch of young guys from Fremont. Wah, wah, wah. Alrighty, so, you know, that show was huge for us. You know, I have the flyer from that show hanging in my hallway right now. And I also have the flyer from that Risk show hanging in my hallway right now. So those were just two big, huge nights for us. You know, it's funny, and a big part of the story too is Jeff's mom, our drummer Jeff Gomes, his mom, aka Penny Piper, you know, was kind of a Fremont legend. You know, she did a lot of gigs. She played around town a lot. She was, you know, a lady boss of this scene back then. And she was doing some background vocals at some studio. I'm not exactly sure who she was singing for, but, you know, she would get brought in to do background vocals. And so one night she was singing, and there was this dude, this Hollywood guy. And, you know, we were trying to get our thing going, and we were all over college radio in the Bay Area. And this guy had been checking out local bands, and he was also working on that session. And, you know, like any proud mom, she's like, you should check out my son's band, Fungo Mungo. And so this guy, you know, looked into us and saw like, wow, this lady's son is in a cool band, you know. And that night, I guess he was driving back after the session, and we were doing some kind of local thing on KFJC, and he heard it, and he's like, oh my gosh, this lady's kid is actually playing, you know, this radio gig. And, you know, he called the different clubs around town, and indeed found out that Fungo Mungo was packing clubs and doing a thing. So anyway, he ended up becoming our manager, and he's the guy who got us signed to Island. And that was pretty nuts, you know. We needed a gig, right? Because Chris Blackwell, and if you don't know who Chris Blackwell is, he was the president of Island Records at the time. And if you like reggae music, a lot of us do. He's one of those guys who helped bring reggae to America and the rest of the world. Because, you know, the Bob Marley Island record connection. So that's pretty wild. At that time, U2 was huge on Island. Anthrax, um, just a lot of really cool acts on the label at the time. We came out and it was nuts. Here we are on Island Records. We needed the gig, and this is a funny story because our good buddy Al Lucchese, and he's another part of the Fungo Mungo story, and we definitely need to do a story on that guy, a whole episode dedicated to him and the studios. But this guy, he needed to see us in action, right? We needed a gig. We didn't have anything booked. So let's have a party at Jackson Street Studios in Oakland. And at that time, the room belonged to Digital Underground, and we're like, damn, we need a place to play. And those guys were super cool. They're all, you could use our room, And so we went out the night before, and we handed out flyers. A couple of guys went to that show. A couple of guys went to that show. We all handed out flyers. We had this big, huge party the next day. We bought like a couple of kegs of beer. And there was these kids all lined up around Jackson Street over in downtown Oakland. And it was just hilarious because it was a free gig, free beer, free band, but it was an early show. I mean, and the whole thing was over in less than an hour. But it's just funny to think the president of Island Records came all the way to Oakland, to see us play at our practice place. We called in all of our friends. Big thanks to Digital Underground for letting us use their room. That was huge for us. And I remember my dad going to that show and seeing the kids slam dancing, and he's like, oh my God, thinking like, oh my, those kids are fighting out in front. Do I need to break those kids up? And I was like, no, that's just kind of what they do, That's funny. God, I love that. So yeah, we got to do that whole crazy thing. And then we went to the Oakland airport because he needed to split right after. And that's where we signed our deal, at the Oakland airport. And somewhere around here, I got all that stuff, and, totally friggin' nuts, from, Ohlone College and Fremont to, the Oakland airport and Island Records, right? So crazy.
Ánh mắt con gái gia đình tôi đó là niềm tự hào lớn nhất. Không nhìn lại, không nhìn về sự mơ nhạc, chỉ học lấy bài học. Những cây cầu tôi đâu là lịch sử, là lịch sử, là lời tiếng best, là lịch sử. Dưới bầu trời mở nhịp điệu này là lời cầu nguyện, sự phục hồi này là lý do. Xem bạn thiết kế